The minority in parliament say foreign investors should back off any potential takeover of AntiLGBT without the requisite parliamentary approval. The minority contends that any takeover of AntiLGBT with foreign investors will be an international agreement which must be subject to Parliament's oversight. Deputy Ranking Member on the Communications Committee, Samuel Nate George, says Communications Minister Eslo Owusu must bring any such deal to sell AntiLGBT to Parliament immediately.
Well, we want to use this opportunity to serve notice to any foreign investor that they must be very careful of signing any deals. Because if they think that they are buying any asset that belongs to the Ghanaian people without the proper parliamentary approval, we can assure them that that agreement is going to be null and void in any court of law in any jurisdiction of this country, because the Constitution of Ghana is clear. If you go and buy stolen goods, you can't say that because you bought stolen goods from the brother of the owner of the goods, it validates it. If the laws of Ghana say that when you are buying a state asset and you are an international company, it must come to Parliament, and you decide to go and buy from a minister without coming to Parliament, well, buyer beware, because Parliament would hold the minister responsible, and I'm confident that the next John Mahama government in 2025 will not respect any such agreements. And so people must be very careful. But as a committee and as the minority on the communication side, we'll properly brief the media next week on this matter. But we want to state for the record that as far as we are concerned, you cannot sell AntiLGBT. One, because you've not officially informed Parliament that you have bought AntiLGBT. Two, if you are selling AntiLGBT to an international company, it must come to this house. We saw President Kufuor sell Vodafone. He came to this house. Eslo Owusu cannot become law unto herself. And so we would expect, and as a committee, we would demand saying that she must respect the directive of Mr. Speaker and come and brief the committee on issues involving the status of AntiLGBT and any potential deal. Because we need to be very careful. As a committee, we are worried. The minority side on the committee, we are worried especially about what happens to the debt. Because AntiLGBT owes a tower company in Ghana almost to the tune of 200 million Ghana cedis. If you say you are not going to pay, what happens to that tower company? And if you bring in this new investor, is the tower company supposed to continue offering services to the new investor? What happens? Who pays it? Are they going to move that debt to the taxpayer, you and I, because somebody has mismanaged a private entity and government has gone to take on that? There are questions that have to be answered. And so, rest assured, there are all kinds of things we are hearing relative to that deal. It won't happen.
Sam George insists AntiLGBT has some financial issues, including substantial debts, which makes it even imperative for Parliament to scrutinize any deal to sell it off.
Well, we all know that when it comes to international agreements, they must come before Parliament. Don't forget that we have raised issues on the floor of this House with the Minister for Communications and Digitalization, Eslo Owusu. First and foremost, if you remember my running battle with her on whether the government of Ghana had bought AntiLGBT, how much they had bought AntiLGBT for, and what all of that, when she came and said the government had not bought it, even at the time Airtel had told its shareholders in India that they had sold AntiLGBT. Subsequently, she came out and said she bought it for $1. Later, we are hearing $25 million. Now, the question is, all of these have considerations for the debt of AntiLGBT. I know that AntiLGBT has debts on its books in excess of $100 million. So, if you are selling AntiLGBT to somebody and the debt is in excess of $100 million, what is the value of the assets? And then what is the value of the debt? Are you selling the company with the assets and the liabilities, or are you just selling the liabilities, the assets alone without the liabilities? Then who takes over the liabilities? Because those liabilities have to be settled. Airtel owes banks. They owe service providers like the tower companies. We have seen the announcement that says that some JV has been entered into. Don't forget that sometime in November last year, a member of the committee, I think the Honorable Lydia Lamisi, if I'm not mistaken, asked a question that brought Eslo Owusu to the floor of the House to give answers on the issue of the transaction. And in contributing to that question, when I rose, I requested of the Speaker that the Minister ought to brief Parliament on what the matter was. The Speaker directed the Minister to brief the Committee of Parliament on Communications on the status of the deal. The Minister promised and pledged to do so. She has not done so yet. We have heard that there's this JV with Hanam or Hamam investments and all of that.
Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kwekwa Asante joins us with more from Parliament. Kwekwa Asante, what else is happening in Parliament today?
Well, Aisha, the House has not sat for a long time today. The House has adjourned because NDC MPs would have to go and have their caucus workshop over this weekend, and they have to travel out of Accra today. And because of that, Parliament adjourned finally. But before that, Haruna Iglisu, the former minority leader, had raised some concerns about attendance in the House. In fact, at the time the House started, there were just a little about 15 MPs on both sides of the House, and Haruna Iglisu was not enthused by that. He raised the issue that the speakers of Parliament would have to take some keen interest in that. Mind you, the House has been undertaking roll call since the start of this meeting. So whenever the House begins, there'll be a roll call. Today there wasn't any because of the very low attendance in the House. So Aisha, the sitting has been adjourned today, and we are looking forward to, for instance, very soon you'll be interviewing the Member of Parliament for the Adansea Sokwa constituency, Katie Amon, also Patricia PJ, and all those for PM Express. I've been speaking with them outside of the floor to get some understanding of how we can arrange that. But generally, the House has not been doing any key business today. They just had to take an adjournment for the NDC MPs to have their workshop this weekend.
Kwekwa Asante with that from Parliament. Definitely, when we get more from Parliament, trust us, we'll bring it to you in our subsequent bulletins. Meanwhile, the controversial anti-LGBTQ bill is only one step away from passage after Parliament concluded the consideration stage. The stage entails the clause-by-clause consideration of the bill, and MPs are allowed to propose amendments. Thursday, the second stage was done, with only the third reading left for the bill to be passed into law. There's more in this report.
What is left now is the third reading, and the third reading does not entail anything. There just has to be a vote in the House for the third reading to happen, and once that happened, this bill would have been passed. Of course, early on in the morning, some concerns were raised by Alexander Afenyo-Markin, who is railing against the custodial sentence imposed in the bill.
What do we want to do? To reform or to destroy? To give an opportunity for such a person to come back with a new character. Mr. Speaker, if that is so, then we should look at the conditions of our prisons. I dare say that should a person go to the prison, he would come back worse off. Mr. Speaker, in active practice, some 10 years back, a client was supposed to be in lawful custody. In the evening, the police officer told me that, "Counsel, if we send your client to Accra, the Central Police Station," the Speaker, for want of a better word, let me say it in Twi,
the minority will not have anything of that sort. They will not accept that. Muntaka Mohammed Mubarak and Sam George, who are minority MPs, raised their opposition to that.
But to say that I should remove incarceration completely, Mr. Speaker, we'll be making mockery of ourselves. So I just want to plead that if our colleagues, especially the majority leader, has worries with a number of years, you can suggest something lower.
The agenda, the punitive measure for that is minimum 3 years, maximum 5 years. That is targeting our children in secondary schools. The setting up of clubs in secondary schools, in neighborhoods. That is the real danger to our society. And that's why that punishment is even higher. So, Mr. Speaker, we stand by the minimum 3 years, maximum 5 years. Thank you.
Chairman of the Constitutional, Parliamentary and Legal Affairs Committee, Kwame Anyumedu-Antwi, backed the position of Alexander Afenyo-Markin. Well, despite all these concerns, the various amendments tabled have all now been voted on, and Parliament has moved on from the consideration stage.
So all the amendment that has been carried will be incorporated into the bill,
to be brought to the House for all of us to see before we consider the third reading. On that note, we bring consideration to a cruise.
There is the likelihood of what is called in Parliament a second consideration where a few issues will be ironed out, but largely the consideration stage of the House is now complete and a vote is set to happen within this week or next week, and then this bill will finally be passed. Some judges and sponsors of the bill are excited about this progress but do not want to go ahead of themselves.
It's not work done yet. We still have a long way to go. We have made some strides, but we are no way done. Like you heard in the House, we are supposed to go and do winnowing. So we're going to wait for the drafters to finish the winnowing. It will come to the committee chair, and then the committee will discuss it, and then the sponsors would also engage with them. But at least we've made some step and some progress, and we're excited about it. As and when we are done with the processes, we will continue with the processes on the floor of the House. We'll let you know. But we just want to say thank you for the publicity and support and mileage you've given to us all through this matter. We are very grateful, and we hope that we can count on you till we complete the process as our partners in ensuring the protection of Ghanaian family values and proper human sexual rights.
There is also the constitutional issue as whether or not this being a private member's bill and imposing a charge on the consolidated fund, President Akufo-Addo will sign it into law when it is passed. But the minority and some MPs already say that if the president refuses to sign this bill, they will not allow that. They will veto the president. Reporting for JoyNews, Kweku Asante, Parliament House, Accra.
Flag bearer of the opposition National Democratic Congress, John Mahama, has proposed the use of legislation to protect economic trees from illegal mining, which continues to threaten cocoa farming in the country. The former president, at a meeting with cocoa farmers in Kumasi, proposed a new law that will ensure due processes are observed if there is a need to mine a cocoa farm. Nana Ojima has more.
According to Cocoa Board, cocoa cultivation fell to 750,000 tons for the 2022-2023 harvest. It is forecast to further reduce between 650,000 and 700,000 tons in the upcoming season. Though there are efforts to increase cocoa production in the coming years, illegal mining continues to pose a threat. Research by Ghana Cocoa Board has shown that several cocoa farms in the western, Ashanti and eastern regions have been lost to illegal mining activities. Water bodies used for cocoa farming in some areas are destroyed. A farmer spoke at a meeting with the NDC flag bearer.
We used to drink from the Tano River, but we can't do so anymore. The river is destroyed.
Currently, the country has a deforestation rate of about 2.5% of the total land area, leading to an annual loss of 135,000 hectares.
We will check the menace of galamsey on cocoa trees, and one of the suggestions that has come is to pass a law on the destruction of economic trees, which would include cocoa. And so if somebody willfully enters a cocoa farm and destroys it because he's mining gold or mining whatever he's mining, he commits an offense, unless he has properly got the permits and compensation has been calculated properly before anything like that can happen. And so use legislation to stop the destruction of cocoa and other economic trees, not only cocoa.
Mr. Mahama proposes the empowerment of traditional authority to have a role in granting of mining license to ensure protection of the forest.
And apart from that, I was here to protect the forest. Natural resources in a bind there. But I was here some rano send a bear won't abide intimate na Accra and ma obi concession say.
We have to involve the traditional authority to help protect the forests. All natural resources are for government, but there is a need for new laws that would ensure the traditional authority have a say in granting of entry permits into forests.
Forest conservation, any sanitation, was say yama ahifo no ka ho. Obi wo ho na okokwa yemu kobudua anabibi without permission of forestry, without permission of ohenana. E was so much isa nipa no. Enti sa nyomani na yebehwe na yesiesie ni ye.
Already, measures have been proposed to regulate mining in the country. For JoyNews, Nana Ojima reporting.
More than 30 labor groups from across the country have converged in Accra this afternoon to decide the course of action regarding a massive demonstration against government. The unions threatened to take to the streets if the government did not scrap a 15% VAT on non-lifeline electricity consumers. An announcement from the Finance Ministry yesterday suspending the tax for wider consultations did not convince them. The unions remain skeptical about government's commitment to cancel the tax outright. That meeting is happening as we speak. We will be taking you live to get a sense of the meeting. But before that, listen to Vice Chairman of TUC, Ken Kodua.
Labour is likely to meet if we receive a letter from the Ministry of Finance withdrawing the 15%. And until we receive that letter, we are resolved on the path we want to take in the demonstration. Like I said, I'm hoping that letter will come today. But we are resolved. The appetite for strike is very ripe. And we don't want to go that path. We want to engage and resolve all the issues pending. But the way we all cited this press release on social media for us is also not healthy. We have written that we want the rate to be withdrawn, and it was just appropriate that the minister would have written to us to say that based on this, we want to now withdraw and engage. But like I said, I'm hoping that before close of day, we'll get that letter from the ministry, and then we'll look at the way forward.
Meanwhile, some of the unions are proceeding with plans to hold massive demonstrations across all 16 regions, with discussions ongoing with the police for protection. The Greater Accra chapter of Organized Labour says they are ready to hit the streets on Tuesday. Patrick Banyemi speaks for the unions in Accra.
Not only about workers, it's even about we and our families at home. Whatever you buy as electricity, you pay a 15% VAT on it. And this has repercussions on our artisans, our tradesmen, and it's going to affect all of us. Our affiliates from the GPRTU across Greater Accra are not going to work. They are all going to join So let us take note that on 13th, within the Greater, no commercial vehicle within Accra will work. The drivers, all of them are going to join the demonstration. And we are going to register our displeasure that it is not about suspension, but it is about total withdrawal.
In a related development, members of the Ghana Private Road Transport Union have directed their members not to work next week, Tuesday, in solidarity with organized labor to mount pressure on government to withdraw the VAT. Abbas Muro is PRO of the union.
We are part of them. TUC Krata say government and try and sign up to the end of on the 12th, on the 1 Twemukra on the 13th. No, we are all joining. Obianya Juma, and this is the first step. Yeah, far away so I can't driver 4 driver ne be one class on the 13th, yeah, Juma, because you can't organize labor. No, be cutting razor, Amaya Shanka no, because Yansu you're fighting for the eco tax. No, and the way be cutting razor. Now, nim yasan the rare demonstration for eco tax. No, so emission tax. No, and the way be 13th no be cutting razor.
We'll be taking you live to the TUC office for a feel of that meeting by labor unions as and when we get the feed. Right now, let's take a break on JoyNews Today. We'll be back with more. Welcome back to JoyNews Today and to the rest of our stories. The renal dialysis unit at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital is once again facing crisis as it accumulates 2 million cedis debt just 3 months after government settled the debt of 4 million cedis. The unit was forced to shut down last year, sparking public outcry as dialysis patients faced an uncertain end to their lives. But Chief Executive of the hospital, Dr. Pokuwari Ampoma, says Parliament's delay in approving new fees and charges is putting the renal unit in a very precarious situation. There's more in the following report by Prince Kodoga.
Very common emotions last year as the renal unit of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital was shut down due to an accumulation of debt in excess of 4 million Ghana cedis.
We are now engaged with government, with the ministry, with other stakeholders to see how quickly we can find the resources to advance, because at the moment we are sitting in a 4 million cedi hole. If we are to operate at our current capacity, which is about 2,000 dialysis sessions every month, then it means that we are going to accumulate about 961,000 cedis of debt every month, in addition to the 4 million cedis that we have already. So this is financially unsustainable.
The hospital was forced to reverse an increment in its dialysis charges imposed last year without recourse to Parliament. The patients said the high cost of treatment makes it difficult for them to follow the prescribed sessions.
You are becoming a burden to the society. You pick a phone, you want to call your friend. He knows you are coming to ask for money, so you will not even pick.
Wow.
You pick a phone, maybe you want to even to say hello. Maybe there's an information you are trying to ask him. He will not even answer it. Later on, he will call back and say, oh, child, I saw your call. Now, this Samuel. It's not true. Because he knew you are coming to ask money. And it's true. When you call the person, it's money.
These prompted series of conversations, including JoyNews' thought leadership event on the matter, where the presidential advisor on health promised the debt will be cleared.
We are waiting for what they are supposed to bring and then to be worked on as quickly as possible. The money is supposed to be provided by our Ministry of Finance, isn't it?
Yes. Okay.
So Dr. Mpoma has to put everything that he's doing, that is being asked to do, as quickly as possible in place. If I were him, I would use 24 hours to put everything in place and present it. Yeah, so they'll present it.
You've already presented.
And
no, you're free to talk, because this is direct.
I've told him what to do.
Yeah.
And then quickly, I'm sure I know what normally such things are very.
Joining us now for more on this is Director of Medical Affairs at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. Wusu Sechere. Also joining me is Bafo Kojahenkra, who is President of the Renal Patients Association of Ghana. Let me start with you, Bafo. What's the state of affairs at the renal unit right now?
Thank you very much. Currently, the unit is open to the OPD. We are having our normal assessment. And then the price they asked us to pay, the 380, that is what we are paying. So far, so good.
Let me ask you, Dr. Wusu Sechere, why has there been a delay in approving the fees? Do you know?
I was telling you, I think we have done what we need to do. We send it to Parliament, and it is Parliament that will have to look at the pros and cons and come out with the approval or otherwise. So it will be very difficult, maybe presumptuous, even for me to try to hazard a guess as to why it hasn't gone through.
So how did you accumulate this 2 million cedi debt?
Well, I think the issue of dialysis funding has been discussed. I think I have snippets of the tape that you played. Basically, there is an under recovery, After the time we started the discussion, and then we even closed down and then reopened. There was a debt of 4 million, which thankfully government has cleared. But every additional dialysis session that we make now, we accumulate another debt because the cost of providing that service is over 750 cedis, and the charge is 380. So there is a 50% or even more cost that is accumulating. So you only need to multiply the number of dialysis sessions we've had since we opened, and even when we were doing the emergency ones to now, and then it won't be too difficult to understand why we have 2 million debt accumulated and still counting, because on a daily basis we are accumulating, we are still doing dialysis.
Do we risk another shutdown if the approval doesn't come in early, as this debt also starts accumulating?
Yeah, I think the shutdown was occasioned by our debtors refusing to supply us consumables. At the moment, we have a bit of it running, but with the debt accumulating, if we don't get that one resolved, it's only a matter of time, and we probably will run into another crisis.
Dr. Osusecho, I'm grateful for your time. He's Director for Medical Affairs at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. We're also joined by Bafo Kojo-Ahenkra, who is President of the Renal Patients Association. We'll be monitoring how this unfolds because we do not want the dialysis center to be shut down again. Let's take a break on JoyNews Today. When we return, we'll be bringing you the very latest coming from the world of business.
Welcome. Let's do some business stories with me, Emma Davis. The president of the Center for Global Development, Masood Ahmed, has expressed concerns about the impact of high interest rates on loans on developing economies in Africa. According to him, the interest rates on most loans advanced to African countries by the Bretton Woods institutions and investors in developed countries make it difficult for low-income countries on the continent to repay. Here's more.
At the beginning of 2024, 9 African states are in debt distress. A further 15 are at high risks and 14 are at moderate risks. Zambia and Ghana defaulted on their debt, joined recently by Ethiopia. Meanwhile, the president of the Center for Global Development, Masood Ahmed, blames the Western financial institutions for their failures to caution African countries against the risks of taking up high interest loans.
It's always difficult to deal with excessive debt because when you restructure or write down debt, it's politically hard to do, technically complicated, and people take a long time getting there. So I don't personally think that there's going to be some grand vision of writing down.
You do or you don't?
I don't. The buildup of debt as a share of GDP is doubled, I think, and the terms on which that debt was taken on. There are countries that were borrowing before COVID at 8–9%. And if you're borrowing at 8 or 9% commercial markets, it's going to be hard to be able to generate projects that are going to pay that off. So frankly, we need to take a little bit of the responsibility on the international community side as well, because we were not raising the alarm on those things quite as much at the time as we do now.
Masood expressed concerns about the increasing rates of debt default by some African countries.
I don't think there's going to be some grand vision of writing down debt levels in the next year or 2 or 3. And yet the numbers that actually default, quite small, right? And single digit, you just name them. Maybe Ethiopia missed a payment or something a bit, but that's still quite small numbers. And the question that I've been struggling with, well, why is that? And what you see is that interest payments have been rising. And
Ghana's financial health is under scrutiny, with a staggering fifth of its tax revenue devoted to servicing debt. These instances are not anomalies, but rather stark representations of the debt dilemma many African nations confront.
Government, as part of the Ghana Cares program, has kick-started the 2024 DigiSmart Scale-Up Initiative for public sector workers. Under the theme Fast-Track Digitalization for Service Delivery, the move is to build the digital capacity of the country's workforce. Speaking to journalists after the launch of the event, Head of the Civil Service, Dr. Evans Agri-Dakon, indicated that more than 800 civil servants have already benefited from the program. Here's more.
The initiative, which is in its second year, forms part of a move by the Tony Blair Institute to support digital skills training for public sector workers in some African countries. According to the head of civil service, Dr. Agri-Dakon, this will improve efficiency as more people will be enrolled onto the program by close of the year.
And if you listen clearly to the discussions and the speeches, what became very critical and very, very important for us to take, one of the major take-homes, is the fact that this is not just, this is not the first time. We started with 170 or so last year, and this is a scale-up, and that is more than 800 of our people who are going to be trained. The idea is that, the idea and my own, what I have, and because I'm being futuristic, will be that a critical mass of our workforce will be digitally sound, and so that they can, change the course of service delivery in this country.
Speaking on behalf of the Minister for Communications and Digitalization, Chief Executive of the National Information Technology Agency, Richard Ofosu, also believes that this will support government's digital economy policy.
Digital skilling to train our people so that they become digitally savvy. So that when government puts out service, they'll be able to consume the service because they understand what it takes to be able to consume that service. So this training is so important. It's from both ends. Public servants, civil servants are learning how to use digital skills, and therefore, once they go to their respective offices, they propagate what they've learned, and therefore contributing to service delivery.
The training is expected to capture all institutions in the public sector.
That'll be all for business. For more business news, do log on to myjoyonline.com. Up next is World News. Do stay.